Okay, are you ready?
Let's go.
Okay, so this week on the show, we have Jimmy Woolley, who started his career in broadcasting. He was the driving force at 12 Yard Productions, which was part of ITV, developing over a dozen original UK shows watched by millions. And since 2023, he's been directing and producing AI short form content through his production company 404 Films, winning nominations and awards globally. And even guest lectured at Ravensbourne Film School, which is a very British, very British name, teaching a masterclass in AI production. So, Jimmy, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. That's I think British were very humble to hear that read out. Like, it's so embarrassing. But go on.
Very cool
Uh,
though.
Oh,
Can
I
you
love
tell
it.
us your 30-second origin story and how you came into AI filmmaking?
Okay, so a long-time executive producer. I was working at ITV. The head of AI at ITV, Paul Kerrison, showed me the first LLMs, some of the stuff Midjourney was working on, some of the early image models, some of the early stuff from Runway. And I was like, I could see this was going somewhere, but this could go a long way. I always worked in development, always coming up with stuff, and I could see that even though it wasn't there now, this is going to go places. And I kind of jumped on board, and the whole thing, as it has for you, it's snowballed. No one was working in this industry 3 years ago, and it's gone skyrocketed. No one could have predicted how well and how fast it would grow.
well, it sounds
Definitely.
like ITV kind of did. If they had a head of AI that early on, that's good for them. But yeah, let's talk about 404 Films. I'm assuming that's sort of a joke on the HTML sort of website error code. And so you're in London there, and you've worked with Lionsgate and BBC Studios. So yeah, how was each of those experiences? I know Lionsgate is very AI forward. We recently met with their chief AI officer, Kathleen Grace, to show a demo of our app Saga. I think they just invested in Runway ML. So 404 Films, that sounds like going pretty well so far.
Yeah, it's really good. So I think it's been a great experience working with these different production companies. So I've done loads of work for the BBC before. So,
Okay.
I've been kind of dipping in and like Channel 4 and all the different UK broadcasters. Like you're right, Lionsgate, because they did that deal with Runway, they were kind of an early one. And I think they went
Mhm.
through a process whereby they were trying to build their own, model based off their own material.
Yep.
But I'm sure kind of thing from the discussions you've had before, like it's really hard to develop a model based on like a really
Yep.
limited data set. Does that make sense? So I think
Yeah,
there's been
definitely.
kind of a road they've kind of gone down. But while I was there, like we are developing all sorts of different new formats and productions, and it was fun. This was at a time when AI was just starting to get good. So remember when
Mhm.
Act One came out from Runway, and you
Mhm.
could record your video, and then you could like put in an image, and you could see it come to life, and you're thinking about. All my mind was thinking about the practical applications of in that, how you can make shows, how you can make content kind of around that. And then, of course, like the video models have then started to get better and better. And I think it's only in the last, people think like AI video has been going, great guns for like maybe a year and a half. But for me personally, I look at the stuff in the last 3 months. I'm just thinking that's where the material is becoming transformational. Like the conversations and the content I'm making. What's great is because I've got so many different areas for films working in. So we've done some like commercial work. We do some like TV pre-production. We do some film work for people who are kind of forward thinking. But all of these are coming from different places and different thought processes. And it's really interesting to see how AI videos, because it's just coming of age, the discussions are getting bigger and broader because it can do more. I think people were talking maybe 3 or 4 months ago that focus on what it's really good at, maybe like animation and like CGI and things. And now I'm having conversations about really in-depth directorial decisions about, how does a character feel when they've been through like a death or a bereavement, or like what are the tells? What's the minutiae of the acting detail within it? And for me, like that's wild. Like I don't know about you guys, but I find that just an incredible space to be in.
Yeah, definitely. I was just speaking with a producer on set this week, and showing a clip, and it was kind of exactly what you just mentioned. Like the the composition is perfect, the image looks perfect. He mentioning the acting was still a little bit, even though I thought that the scene cut together well and looked good, but he was still kind of really scrutinizing the acting. So, yeah, we've been talking to a lot of studios and producers trying to figure out how to use these tools in the production workflow. Not just experimental, but to get the projects made faster while keeping control. We have one script in development with Komodo Entertainment in Toronto, and it's half period piece and half present day. And, when that came up, it's like, well, that's an insane budget. But now thinking about how to use it with AI, maybe we could do the period like Doug Liman's new production coming out where they're just shooting it in a studio space and using AI to kind of build the period around it would cut the budget down and make this something that could actually be done. So yeah, that's why we helped. That's why we built Saga to help with that production pipeline. Now you got to work on the famous Critterz project with OpenAI. I remember when that came out. That was like one of the first things that sort of launched AI, I think, video into the mainstream back in the DALL-E 2 days. How did you get involved with that? And what was it like?
Well, I think like I can only say kind of like so much. Obviously, like the NDAs and the production are like very tight knit, so I can't give too much away. But first of all, it's an amazing project. Like it's a top level. What really makes these kind of projects stand out from other ones in the AI field is that it's got proper filmmakers involved, so they understand like the budget's history, the story, the importance of like the minutiae of the detail. Does that make sense? So like you can make like a mid-range film, in the hundreds of thousands, and you can think it's good, but like people don't understand that when you're scaling up to like millions and like tens of millions and hundreds of millions, that's where you've really got to think about things on a frame by frame basis. So, there's 25 frames in a second or 24, whichever way you're working towards. And so you really have to be a lot more detailed. And when you get into that kind of level, that's when you start experiencing like real filmmaking, when you're looking at it. And I think what everyone's trying to achieve is that you're not watching an AI film. You're not watching anything other than a story. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
That's almost an aside to the question. Um, but yeah, to your question, like I think what I'm finding and what I'm amazed about is because I'm part of the AI Creative Network. We're like a non-profit organization in London, and that's of creatives who all work in kind of the fields of AI in lots of different areas in terms of commercial film, all different areas. But it's small. I don't know about anyone. I don't know what it's like because it's obviously expanding rapidly. But the conversations I'm having a lot of people this year are the same people I was having conversations with last year. And part of me wonders whether, like, even though once you get immersed in it, you can see the benefits and potentials, like, it's still a relatively small world. So I met a guy called Joe Ligo. He lived like, the next town over. We had like some good conversations. And I think with these big productions, it's based on like, what have you produced? And then it's a case of like, an element of serendipity to anything kind of thing. Are you having conversations with the right people? They pass me on to another person. And then, to be working with people like Nick Cleveroff and Chad Nelson,
Mhm.
it's really good because you can kind of, you can see that they're so committed and so, enthused by the whole process. And then because it's like an AI first production, like everyone in that room is going to be like, we're going to make this happen. And to have that kind of commitment and not have like from my broadcast days kind of thing, if I was to bring like a development project and it would use I think there'll be a lot of reticence along the way. But if you're coming at from the perspective whereby this is what we're going to make, then it makes it a lot smoother production process. Does that make sense? You can ask the right
Yeah.
questions without any kind of level of fear.
Yeah, definitely. I got to meet Chad Nelson at OpenAI Dev Day, and he's great. But yeah, I'm always curious. Like I see Google, it seems like they're very much getting into cinema and production and filmmaking, and they make their own documentaries. They have a studio now. So I was wondering about OpenAI, and yeah, I mean, they do seem committed. I think they hired the writers of Paddington 2, which was a
Mm.
fantastic movie. I loved it, and I think they were going to do it, make it a feature, right, to premiere at Cannes. Did that ever happen, or NDA? You can't talk about that.
I can't really talk about it too much, but obviously they're releasing some film at Cannes, and I think the project's still happening. But this is one of the benefits of doing a level of that kind of film is that you know, this script has to be like absolutely perfect. All the things, I think people look at AI and just think every element's going to be AI, everything's going to be faster in production, but there are a load of things AI, you know, maybe like can't do as well, or those kind of things, or you have to reach to a level of human authenticity. And those things still take time. They still take, time to kind of like you think about the production cycle of a traditional animated film, and you're talking properly years. And if the technology is literally only coming of age in the last like 3 or 4 months, I think you have to factor that in. But yeah, no, it's exciting times. When you talk about like Chad, like
Yeah.
having met that guy, he is like a content machine. Like I've
Mm.
never seen somebody who can just turn around things. Like 24 hours later, he might be like showing me like a small side projects and stuff, and I'm just like, how do you find the time? Like the guy's he is a genius, okay? He's in the right place at the right time. But
Yeah.
yeah, a fascinating individual.
Cool, cool. And so tell us about some of your other works. You've done a lot of comedy and satire, and they seem to be very script led, which, yeah, it's important to us. We started our, saga as when LLMs came out as a writing tool, story ideation, and now dialogue and everything. And you've been winning some awards. So the Lens Gold Award, Best Use of AI, and I just watched the War That Never Was, which has a new American. It was kind of funny to me, comedy with a serious message. And that one got the WSXA Barcelona Film Festival Award, Best Immersive Film. And you're doing new animation series. So, yeah. So, what are some of your favorite projects you've worked on?
So you talk about The War That Never Was, like specifically. It's the kind of
Yeah.
film that because there's a twist at the end, because there's like a serious message.
Hmm.
Now, if you're trying to like sell scripts or you're trying to sell like ideas, that's the kind of thing that's going to be very hard to get like production budget for. You think about, the kind of conversation you're going to have and the kind of broad groupthink that's going to be pushing against that. It's going to be hard. So what AI is brilliant at, it can, make budgets like very small. And, if you're prepared to like a level of creative risk, a level of commercial risk, then, it's brilliant. It's absolutely perfect for that. And I had this idea and you talk about like LLMs with like script use, but yes, it can kind of open the door, but I often find that AI, just as a general rule, can sometimes deviate to the mean. So the more you can put in that's like unique, really think about it. I would say like, I've got an army of friends and different people in the industry who I can, soundboard against and like, just do like comedy passes, things like that. Those kind of things are still essential. That's where like the human loop can be really important. I think people really underestimate script and idea necessarily. Like a nice test you can do to find out if your idea is any good at all. So imagine you get a brief and you think, right, I've got a few ideas to fill this like commercial brief. And I do one, two, three, and I might just like shortlist them. And I might say like to the LLM saying, look, this is the brief. These are my three ideas. Come up with two of your own. Okay. So then you got five. Like randomize them, take them to an entirely different LLM, and then just say, rank these
Yeah.
ideas. And then you will find out how good your idea is, just to kind of give you like just a level of, you know, um, ideation behind it. But yeah, script essential, very important. And maybe you can use like LLMs for like those blocks sometimes where you just think sometimes it's not quite working well, or there might be like a hole, or there might be like a nitpick where you need something.
Mhm.
But generally speaking, spending half the production on the half the time of the production on the script, and then you're thinking about like how does it look in terms of like world and like what's going to make it stand out. So that project specifically, I was creating like profiles and looks and like camera settings, so that by the time I even started to create any frames, I had a really good idea about the kind of look and style and trying to do something like different. So like I was referencing things like Cower anamorphic lenses, the kind of thing you wouldn't normally use for anything, but like bringing it into this scene And also thinking about like color. You'll notice like in that film, a lot of it's really light, a lot of it's really bright. Maybe if you're starting out in AI, don't go down that route because the thing is about like light and exposure is that it does exactly that kind of thing. So if you get like artifacting, like a lot of the models I used at that time, like Kling 2.6, if you use like a really bright palette, sometimes you can get some like some artifacting. It's much harder to work with than sometimes a dark color palette. But even with that, within that, so you got to, design your look, design like maybe your camera setup, and then you're working on your character design, and it's all those different steps of a film that you kind of go through, and then by the time you get to like rendering the actual videos at the end, I say that's like, that's the cherry on top. For me, that's like, you get there and it's like this is your reward for putting in all the work, you know?
It's funny because it's like the exact pre-production process. You're just doing it with all these different AI models instead of department heads. You've got your cinematographer is the one you're bouncing the shot lists and color palette. I remember that meeting at our recent pre-production meeting, the production designer and the cinematographer sitting down to talk about the color palette and things too. And even the script, you got your writer's room with your different LLMs to just basically explain the whole pre-production, but how AI can help one person kind of go through on their own to do that pre-production journey.
Yeah, it's a marvel. I would say that because I was talking to a friend, George Kenwright, works at Google DeepMinds, just about like in his experience, the people he's met who are really good at AI just as a part of the course kind of thing. And he would say it's generalists. It's the people who like to dabble in all sorts. It's the people who kind of read wide, the people who like to have a foot in every department. Like my background in television working in development, so we might be developing new shows and we might like pilot and script things. And so, you're the person arranging to get the camera there on the day. You're the person that's going to be sit there and the edit. You're the person that's going to be, directing all the different movement, all the different conversations, and we'll be writing the script. And if it's like, entertainment, it could be writing the questions. So you need to be able to understand them. But what I would say is that that also exposes one of the flaws in AI kind of thing. Like because you can do it as one person, sometimes temptation is to do it as one person.
Mm.
But when I say about like people checking the script, reading the script, getting that feedback loop, and talking to people who are experts within different areas, in terms of like coloring, those kind of things might take you from like, 80%, 90%, just chasing those top areas. Does that make sense? That
Yeah,
that's what can really move up content.
as I just saw, actually, there was a news article in Toronto about some guy who thought he had like come up with the secret of the universe because the AI had kept feeding whatever he was, inputting, and he was like, "I figured everything out," and it just took him down some crazy rabbit hole. So sitting by yourself doing it, maybe the movie you think is the best movie in the world isn't so great. It's always good to bounce it off of real people for sure.
Has that
Yeah.
been, you mentioned the Creative AI Network, a nonprofit collective, and you've got BAFTA winners and all. Has that been helpful for support, maybe landing gigs? Has that been the purpose of the network?
Yeah, it's kind of because it was set up by I think it was like maybe a few years ago by people like Izzy Amani, Petra Molnar. Petra Molnar, she's a great creative in the UK, but she's got a wonderful story. So up until like 3 years ago, she was a dental hygienist, and then she kind of got into AI, and she is like the poster girl from someone who's just like was always creative but never had a let to someone who has had their work featured in Times Square up on a big billboard, is
Cool.
working like on proper like animated like series. It's wonderful. But like the Creative AI Network, as I see it, so there's like a WhatsApp group that I'm part of, and like they've got a broad group that's like I think it's 1,500 members or something. But we can kind of like just say, look, workflows, we've kind of hit a roadblock here. Has anyone got any ideas? You can come back and forth. And what's good is that it also meets in real life. So like once a month, at least, like they've just got an open thing where people can just come along to the pub. We can have a chat. We can just just talk about where things are going. because I mean, like I said, like it's only come really of age in the last like 3 or 4 months. So to have those kind of meetings, have live chats with people who are also like within this system, yeah, it's invaluable. It's really good. There's so many unknowns because in the world of content, they just like shaken up the box, and no one really knows where these things are going to land. And I think we're all trying to figure it out together. You guys must be the same, I assume.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've done a variety of AI work. You've done dramas, commercials, original films. In the past, you were a development researcher, producer, did a radio show in university. You mentioned where do you think things are going? What do you think the through line is? Like, where do you see AI video going, and how it's going to change industries and the world?
That's a big question.
More people
Um,
like Petra breaking through, I guess. It's an
yeah.
optimistic
Well, I just
future.
saw Midjourney. Midjourney now has medical imaging that's better
Oh my
at
God.
MRI than
Yeah.
it is changing the world and in ways we can't predict. So, do you have any, you know, insight into where you think it's going to go?
I mean, I was asked the same question at South by Southwest London. Like, oh no, no, sorry, tell a lie. At the a different conference last week, and
Mm.
I think I'd probably give you the same answer, which is first of all, it's really hard to predict, but in just the creative field, the area I work in, the area you work in, I think it's going to be a lot more about like ideation. Do you have the idea, like the kernel, which is going to make people watch? And then if you've got like that zenith and you've got that vision to explain what that is in like clear English, then I think a lot of the other production processes are going to like fall away. So I could imagine, in terms of like AI video, you're removing the camera, you're removing the set, but it's still good to have like loads of other elements within that kind of process. But I think it's going to become more and more focused. There's general economic theory which says that, if you were to remove away something which was, taken up 30% of the time, like you're still going to use all the time it's allocated, but it's going to be more evenly distributed to the things that can't be done. So in terms of like ideation and like, scripting and refining, I would also say like, I'd really think about the very top level because I think if AI can get you 90% of the way there, and if everybody can get to like 70%, for example, like very easily, then what's going to define your content is by being, it has to be much further above. There's going to be like there is right now, there's a content wave on the way from like, from China, India, a lot of the emerging markets, America as well, whereby first of all, people aren't ready for it, but also thinking about what is going to make your content, you know, authentic, watchable, what's going to make it relate as a story. Every piece of film, every piece of content you make has a story at its heart, has like a purpose. And, drilling into what those are, because ultimately we don't make films for machines, we make films for people. And so if you can really like drill into your audience kind of thing, what's going to appeal, what's going to create that narrative, that's going to be much more valuable going forward. Whereas a lot of the like more technical aspects, I heard this interview from the head of Anthropic where he was talking about how, they're hiring a lot more philosophers because a lot of the technical problems are being solved. It's more about the right question to ask. I mean, if you ever read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy,
Yeah.
Douglas Adams, where he just goes like, you can tell the solution to the answer of life is like I think it's like was
42.
it like with yeah the solution to the answer is 42, but that's not the question. It's like what's the question? It's like that was easy, but like the
Yeah,
question that you're asking, like what is it you want? That's where the real grit is for me anyway.
that's a that's a great answer. And you mentioned South by Southwest London. I got to speak on a panel there last year, and really enjoyed it. I love London. Our grandmother is from Fulham, and yeah, so I saw another film conference panel, or maybe it was just a generic panel, but the AI Summit London.
That was
So
the
I
one,
mean,
yeah.
London is just it's a big AI hub with DeepMind, and it's becoming a big film hub. Like Hollywood is filming there a lot of the Marvel movies. So What's going on in London? Is it going to be the AI Hollywood, or what's your impression? And how was the AI summit?
Um, like that was brilliant. That was so interesting. Like I know whenever you go to things like, AI, if you go to like AI on the lot or you go to like all these like AI places, then it's full of like, people who are evangelical about like what you're trying to do. So you're not kind of like fighting a wave. Maybe like South by Southwest, you've got kind of a more of a mixed audience because there's so much like traditional media involved. But when you go to like, you go to like the AI Creative Summit and you're talking about like creating like new films and creativity, it's a wonderful place to be. It's a wonderful place to speak. It's a great place to, share ideas. But to your point about London, um, London's always been a great creative hub. Like that's kind of been true for a long time.
For sure.
But
Pinewood.
I think, yeah, well, but also like I'm looking at it from like a strategic point of view, and like America and China seem to have got all the models. Okay, so you've got people who are using the models like within like third party setups, so like maybe Magnific, or you might have in video in India. But like if you talk about like where the models are actually based, I think it's pretty evenly split between USA and China for the very best. And then, where does kind of Europe sit in there? And especially like London, I think about what is London with AI. And what I'm finding is that it's people who are using that creativity because it's always been a very creative hub. It's the people who are actually using the tools. So like less of the kind of like technical angle, not about using like infinite H100s. This is about like practical application of the tools. And what I'm finding is like the people who are open to it, and there's an increasing amount, from traditional film and TV backgrounds. It's just so happens a lot of them are based in London. And so we're happy to have those conversations. And once you get like a critical mass, that's just where it's a good place to be.
Right. And you're also doing some stuff outside film, like a quiz show with real contestants and AI visuals. It's called 10 Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds fun.
So, good.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was just wondering, like, when and how can people sign up to play?
Yeah, we're just at like a piloting phase. So, 4 films, and I work with a guy called Stefan Iriarte. He's someone who I worked at Lionsgate with. He's developed hundreds of hours of broadcast TV. But we just thought a lot of people are talking about AI just in terms of maybe like the film aspect or like the really high end stuff because it's doable and you think about where the finance could be, that's where it is. But you've also got to be realistic that say it can, they get 10,000 film submissions and they're only going to show what like 500. So there's like a practical level to it. And so we were thinking where could you apply AI, using areas we've worked in before, to maybe do things which other people are not. And we thought, quizzing, we really understand quizzing. Both of us have come up with quizzes before. We've had them on TV, BBC, all around the world. So how can we apply that? And then we were testing, if it's someone who's made up playing a quiz or like it's all artificial or machine led, then I feel like it's not an invitation to watch. It doesn't appeal to me to watch a machine talking about a machine because it feels, scripted and like a fallacy of point. Whereas, the thing is about non-scripted is that there's a story driven by, you or me. Like anybody could be on these programs. And so thinking, how could we do it in terms of, what's a minimal level whereby we could like film them within a setup that we can control just online, and then take that and trying to fix the bits which are, which cost the money, the hard cash, but which really, don't really need to. Like I've worked on quizzes before whereby the camera setups. There's going to be like a two shot. There's going to be like a crane over the top. Maybe you'll have like one or two more, like for close-ups, but that's effectively what it's going to be. So if you're working in AI, you're thinking, well, you got all your start frames, you got your contestant, you can use your like video drivers. Like this is all possible. Does that make sense? But people don't seem to be thinking within those fields because it's not, the top level of VFX. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And yet people watch it by the million every day. So if you're talking about viewers, it feels like there's an opportunity for that.
Yeah, it's creative. And definitely, like you said, if there's waves of content coming in, everyone's doing LLMs reverting to the mean. You've got to do some creative stuff to stand out. The quiz show is one, and then you've got an AI song creator contest too, right? I think the finals are this week, so it'll be out by the time the episode airs. And people use AI to make songs, and then you at 404, you'll make the music videos for them for the top five. Is that right?
So when we looked at this, because there's like a bit more to the story. So the guy I work with, Stefan Ariati, he developed mini mix sorry, he developed a song competition with Little Mix. I don't know, they're a very big act in the UK. And it was called like the session. It did relatively well on broadcast. But the thing is about like that and X Factor and all those kind of shows is that if you can't perform on stage, then you can't get through the front door. It doesn't matter if you're the best songwriter in the world. If you can't face up to 1,000 people, then you're not going to get through. Where we thought AI could enable that was whereby you could send us your song, and it doesn't matter. You can be like, a bedroom producer. You could have a face that's maybe not designed for camera. We're all guilty sometimes. And the idea is you could win this competition. And we just thought that was such an appealing thing. But what's great about this is that we're not saying just AI songs. So yeah, we've had some AI songs involved. We've also had loads of hybrid work. We've had loads of people from producers who have used like their own voice, but use like strands and kind of put it together. We've also had like people who have been on like BBC Introducing, which is like a big music platform in the UK, proper bands, singers without any AI involved at all. And so from us seeing these kind of applications come in, because we had a few hundred applications, which yeah, we were quite pleased at for a first run. But they're from like 8 different countries, and the diversity and like the talent out there is like it's amazing. Like it feels like when I talk about waves of content, you got to think about like distribution and marketing. And we were thinking about, just from creatives ourselves, if we can give a platform which is going to be able to enable people to cut through, then wouldn't that be a good thing? And then we've taken all these songs, we've created like a relative shortlist based on like, the quality in terms of like musicality and like a range of songs. And then we've sent them across to judges who work in like, A&R, they work, within technology, kind of a broad sweep. And then we'll get the top five. And then those are going to be the ones we're going to make music videos out of. So what we're going to end up with is like a quality show at the end. Imagine like a top of the pops of the 21st century. So a really good like small showcase of really good songs, but also to be able to say, you're a creator who couldn't get a let in the industry otherwise. This is something that you've got that you can keep. You can keep like this video is yours as much as we use it to promote. Then wouldn't that be a good thing all around? And but we also saw because we're based on formats, so you could say like what's in it for us. But if we can, yeah, we want to build this up. We want to snowball this. So once we've done the first, then we can do a second, and we want to be able to grow this out as like a brand where we can, if there was a right like association with like a technology or something who wanted to like help support it, great. But really, it's got to be like the right thing to support new music because that at its heart, that's what we're trying to do.
That's pretty
Yeah.
interesting because if you watched there was a Music Exploder, I think maybe, but anyways, there's a show on Netflix, and one of the episodes they talked about auto tune. And personally, I always wondered why rock stars from, the 80s and before that always looked different than all the pop stars after the 90s who were all like kind of beautiful. And in that episode, they talk about a music producer or a label producer or owner who said to whoever designed like the auto tune machine, he said, "Thank you. Now I can just hire beautiful people to sing my music." And it's so funny what you just said because a lot of people think AI is like people not being creative and just letting the robot do the work, but you've actually created this contest that will bring it back to the musical talent again because this wall that's prevented anybody from being able to become pop stars in the last 30 years is dissolved, and this tool that everybody's criticizing for being anti-human is allowing them to be creative again. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
heard that similar story about Bob Dylan. Like he was like the last face for radio kind of thing, and you know after the TV era and the color TV era, everything changed. Even last night, I don't know why YouTube algorithm popped it up, but I saw Susan Boyle on Britain's Got Talent, and I rewatched it, and yeah, it's just you know she's so uncharismatic at first, and everyone judged her looks, and then she just blew everyone away. So I hope she's out there somewhere doing well, and there's the bell. Jimmy, how can people follow you? I guess on LinkedIn, and they should go to 404films.net. Yeah, we can put other links in the description. Let me know.
Yeah, you can also follow me on YouTube. That's where I post like a lot of our public facing stuff. I'm sure as with you guys, like we can't put a lot of our commercial material because it's like a lot of it's sensitive, but we always try and carve out time. So like every week or two, we'll always be posting something. You know, we've got some great World Cup satire we're kind of working on. And also like Song Creator, if you want to follow Song Creator, 404 Films 1, that's our handle on YouTube. Follow us and you won't miss a thing.
And if you're a filmmaker or a writer working with AI and want a tool that helps you go from idea to structured script to visuals while staying in control of the story, you can try Saga for free at createsagas.com. So, Jimmy, what's one last piece of advice that you can give to our viewer?
I think the handbrake's off. If you've got imagination, if you've got script, if you've got something which you can make, you know, it's down to you now. Like you can't sit there and just say like I wasn't liked because of this or that. You know, this is your opportunity, this is your moment, this is what you can do. Like a lot of the barriers which existed before are not good. So you've got to test yourself. You can't hold on to something. I see so many producers who will sit on an idea for like 5 years or 10 years. But like you've just got to put it into the world and like find out whether it sinks or swims. Like this is your opportunity. AI can help you enable that.
Because
Because
the
the future
future
The
is
future
is
yours.
is
yours.
yours.